you have been the guy, right? For 5 decades, Leigh, that's pretty incredible.
Well, I started in 1975 at a time where there really was no formalized agentry. Teams could just slam the phone down and say, sorry, we don't talk to agents.
Mm,
So 64 first round draft picks and eight first picks overall and 12 players in the Pro Bowl in the Hall of Fame later.
yeah.
Uh, if Rip Van Winkle had gone to sleep when I started in 1975 and awoke today, he'd be in culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But the industry or sports in general really has changed since you started back in the '70s, especially with what is new these days with the NIL and the rules and the portal and all that. It just seems like it's more difficult for, let's say, the coaches who are looking for talent. We've had a lot of great coaches on as of late. It's made these guys, their jobs, a little bit more difficult because at any given time, if a player is upset, they can say, hey, you know what, I'm out. I'll go into the portal and find another home.
Just in the last 5 years, there have been three fundamental changes that rock the whole foundation that the three of us have known as collegiate and professional sports. The first is NIL, which started out to compensate players a little more in terms of money and turned into a recruiting war from high school to college, where the quarterback Underwood at Michigan commits last offseason to LSU for allegedly $4 million. And then a Michigan alum comes along and offers him $14 million, and he switches to Michigan. And you have transfer portal where the player sits out at Tennessee because he doesn't like his NIL. He goes to UCLA, and UCLA's second string quarterback comes right back on the portal and switches to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then you have gambling, which is an existential threat to the integrity of the sport. If we continue having situations where people give inside information or shade performance in partnership with gamblers, people start to wonder, are these games fixed? Are they real?
Right.
And then you have wrestling, and then you have conference realignment, which takes away most traditional rivalries. And I went to UC Berkeley. If you walk across campus, you look at the Pacific Ocean, and now that school's in a conference, the ACC, that's on the Atlantic coast. So it's not exactly your traditional rivalries.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, what do you do when you've got, like, as an example, I'll just throw a player out there right now, Arch Manning, who, has had a phenomenal, probably is the greatest game ever he's played this past week. And he's young, right? And most likely he'll play another year. Maybe he'll play 2 more years in college because he's getting paid more, right? What would you tell him if you were his agent? What would you do?
I would sit and ask him to do an internal inventory as to what's most important to him. Is it short-term economic gain? Is it long-term economic security? Is it geographical location?
Mm,
Is it finishing his education? Is it family considerations? In other words, make a list and then the football considerations, being a starter, being on a winning team, the quality of coaching.
mm.
You need to take a deep dive into each player's priorities and goals and understand them not generically, but as they exist. And for all we know, Arch Manning desperately wants to complete his college degree before he gets out. Or he may figure, when you talk to players who have left college for the pros, sometimes they'll just tell you, I've done what I can in college. It's time for the next step. So you'd have to assess what his unique fulfillment is and craft an approach that speaks to that.
Interesting. Yeah. And we're going to see some big talent coming, I think, going into certain drafts over the next couple seasons. And then, like, you look at guys who, and I hate to say this, but like you'll look at someone like an Abdul Carter who just went early in the draft this past year, hasn't had the best year, to be honest with you. He might have made more money if he stayed in college. I don't know. So that's what they're wrestling with these days.
I think one of the things we've gone to recently is rush to judgment on some of these players,
Okay.
especially at the quarterback position. It used to be it would take 2 or 3 more years. Abdul Carter may become a monster as a defensive lineman um, as the years go on.
Yeah.
But we take this snap judgment, and it's an adjustment. The pro football game is quicker, faster, players are better. It takes a while to see the field clearly.
Yeah.
So I would say that's a work in progress.
I want to talk to you about one of my favorites, let's just say, sport, and that's baseball, and what we have seen thus far. Some of the biggest contracts in sports history. I think they might even go beyond maybe Shohei's contract eventually. So, the potential, at least what I'm hearing, Leigh, correct me if I'm wrong, but the potential strike. I mean, this is what I'm hearing right now.
In baseball?
Yeah, I mean, it's possibility. Have you heard the rumblings about this?
Well, only because baseball at the management level wants to put a salary cap in the same way they have in basketball and football. And the sport really doesn't need a salary cap. And at the end of the day, they talk about money and big market teams and all the rest of it. All the teams have enough resources. Basically, they're not saying that they have economic problems. And this new group of free agents is really talented and will probably be explosive. So you're going to see with Kyle Tucker or Alex Bregman or Kyle Schwarber or Bo Bichette, Cody Bellinger, Pete Alonso. It's a rich free agent class, and so it'll produce bigger contracts, and that'll produce the reaction among ownership that this is all going away, and we can't afford it.
You don't see a potential strike happening based on this?
So if you look historically, back in 1994, they had the last strike in baseball, and the next year, the attendance and viewership dropped by 40%. And it's so destructive to have a labor stoppage. But baseball players, unlike football and basketball, have been very successful in the past negotiating these collective bargaining agreements. And because they're together all year round and they have older players, they tend to have the ability to sustain a strike. I think it's totally destructive for any sport to not take care of collective bargaining agreement in a quiet, behind-the-scenes way, because you're not going to get sympathy from fans. It's millionaires fighting billionaires for big riches. So I'm very hopeful that cooler minds will prevail, and they'll see that they're in a sport that quadrupled its gross receipts from that destructive 1994 strike.
I got to ask you a question here, and I would love to get your perspective. We're seeing a lot of just gambling now from players in sports. And you saw what's going on in the NBA and how it's trickling into other sports, now baseball. Although baseball, maybe it's not that new, right? We saw it years ago. But I mean, how does this affect professional sports, even like from the legal gambling side? Because people might think, oh gosh, maybe it is fixed. How am I gonna put a wager on this game in Las Vegas? You know what I mean? What do you think about all of this?
I wrote an article in the New York Times a couple of years ago and said that gambling is the existential threat to the continuation of the popularity of college and professional sports. Two ways that someone can consort with a gambler: they can give them inside information. This player's not going to start. This player's more injured. This player is out for this week. And second of all, they can shave performance.
Hmm.
Now, we've seen that happen in basketball. We've seen it happen allegedly in baseball. And if you start to imbue average fan with doubt over whether the game is played on a level playing field, same rules, same effort, no same officiating, no outside influences, if all of a sudden that belief gets shaken,
Yeah.
then it's a slippery slope to just being wrestling, where we know that it's an entertainment, it's not a competitive sport. So they're going to have to be very aggressive in each sport. The NFL just issued another big warning to players to not be involved. Um, but when I say inside information, I'll give you an example. Um, so back in the day, I'm representing Steve Young and the 49ers. I go to his hotel room the night before, and he's been knocked over by a defensive player in practice. And no one in the world knows this, but he's not going to play the next day. I know this. If I went and called the gambler and said, put everything on the team playing the 49ers, that's inside information. I can't do that.
Right.
Mum's the word. So it's a real danger. And no one ever thought that the impregnable wall between sports and gambling was going to break this way. Now you have a couple owners owning NFL owners owning part of FanDuel, right?
Yeah.
You can actually go into the Washington Commanders Stadium and make a bet, and you can do the same thing for in the NBA for the Chicago Bulls. So this was a concept of unintended consequences. They were so desperate for the revenue that no one did the thinking about how do we stop this from destroying the game.
Incredible. It's crazy, right? I mean, you've been around this whole time, but although you've seen gambling around, and I mean, it's not going to stop, right? Or is it? I mean, how do the leagues put a stop to this? Can they even?
It'll never stop.
Um, So remember, this is all happening at the margin of sports
Yeah.
because most players are making so much money that they don't need a couple $100,000 from this is happening at the margin. It tends to happen with players that are on the fringe, are not making the big dollars, or the rest of it. You just have to keep telling players over and over again, if you want a pro career, you cannot be involved in gambling in any way, period. And you either want your pro career or you want to place bets on games.
We always love talking to you, Leigh, and getting your side of everything and your opinions and whatnot. You also do some great speaking all over the world. Talk a little bit about what you've been doing these days.
Um, I put together a concussion foundation to do research into causation, to try to find better cure, to provide a training program for young neurologists. Because I had a crisis of conscience back in the 1980s, because representing half the starting quarterbacks, and they all get hit in the head. And we would go to doctors and ask, how many is too many? What's the magic number? When should you contemplate retirement? And they had no answers. So I started holding concussion conferences. Um, and we've held about 35 of them. Last year at my Super Bowl party, we did 2 hours. Um, I've been working really hard on trying to make the sport safer. I have a new book that's going to come out in a couple months. The cover reveals on December 3rd. It's called The Comeback. And it talks about how life pushes all of us back. We have disappointments, frustrations, failures. And so they can be romantic, they can be marital, they can be economic, they can be substance abuse. Um, that will happen inevitably in all of our lives. How do you come back?
Mm.
Can you be resilient? So that book's got stories of different tales that give people a pathway to how they recover.
Love it.
Oh, great. Congrats.
Yeah,
Look
I'm
forward
looking
to
forward
reading
to
it.
that for sure. Leigh Steinberg, as always, hey, happy holidays. We'll talk again real soon.
Happy Thanksgiving to you both.
All right,
Thanks,
there you
Leigh.
go.